Bonjour à tous et bienvenue à ce panel qui promet énormément d'inspiration. Ce panel sera complètement en anglais. N'hésitez pas à poser vos questions en français plus tard. Nous pourrons traduire pour les orateurs qui sont ici présents. Nous démarrons environ vers 11h10, entre 11h10 et 11h15. Le temps qu'il y ait un peu plus de personnes qui viennent parce qu'il y a eu 2 créneaux horaires qui ont été communiqués, un à 10h55 et un à 11h10. C'est pourquoi on préfère commencer un tout petit peu plus tard. Merci à vous pour votre temps, pour votre présence. Et dans cette attente, on vous projette une vidéo qui, je le souhaite, va vous inspirer au niveau du contenu de cette table ronde. Merci à vous et à très vite. So, hi and welcome. So, as we sit here today, I invite you to take a moment to gaze upward beyond the walls of this room and envision the endless expanse of the universe above us. So let's take some imagination before starting. With every twinkle of a distant star, we are reminded of our deep-seated human desire to explore, to seek knowledge, and to reach for the impossible. This drive has united us, pushing the boundaries of what we know and challenges us to redefine our place in the cosmos. So to answer some questions that we have today between the intersection of AI and space technology, we have 5 speakers with us today, incredible speakers coming from around the globe. So please make a great welcome for our first speaker. And the first one is Mr. Ndudu Ekwo. He has worked in the data center industry for over 10 years. Yeah. Delivering data centers for small co-locations and large hyperscale clients around the world. Please, Ndudu, join me. Our second speaker is Nathalie Meuzy. Nathalie has a degree. She has a degree on law and sociology. She has started his career in journalism at Magnum Pictures. Then she has moved the rest of her career on ESA, so European Space Agency. At 2007, she was in charge of political social. So I'm translating in live from French to English just to explain you. So she was in charge from political social, and she was on for ESA actually, and for the European Spatial. Please welcome Nathalie Meuzy. A great welcome. Our third speaker is Sahit Ridi Madara. He's a senior venture manager at Creative Destruction Lab and the founder of Boomi and Space, a bespoke deep tech and investment advisory firm based in Paris and Abu Dhabi. He brings a wealth of expertise to deep tech and space ecosystem across Europe, the Middle East, and India. And a fun fact that I will mention later on, Sahit was a national hockey player in India during the university degree. Please make a great welcome for Sahit. The fourth speaker is Thibaut Verbist. Thibaut Verbist is a seasoned legal expert with 30 years experience in fintech, blockchain, AI, and cybersecurity. As the chief legal officer of the International Space Federation, he advances regulatory framework for cutting-edge technologies, a World Bank advisor and member of the EU Blockchain Observatory and Forum. He has shaped the global digital finance policy, and for the fun fact, before becoming a lawyer, he was writing science fiction books, and the first one, actually, it was what we are, let's say, living today. It was a science fiction novel about a quantum computer, actually, as a quantum computer. Thank you so much, and welcome, Thibaut, please. And the last speaker is Emmanuel Dogeras. He has started at Exium, where he successfully developed the company's export range as industrial product range manager. He then joined the team of Target Partners in Munich as an investment director, where he successfully financed a wide range of startups in the software, deep tech, and digital marketplace industries. From 2014 to 18, Emmanuel was a staff administrator and hosted the think tank regarding the evaluation of companies. And the fun fact for Emmanuel, early stage technologies may have their flaws. So as an early adopter of car GPS in 2000, he remembers proudly following his brand, New GPS, and driving 50 kilometers on a dirt trail while the freeway was 20 meters away. Thank you, and welcome our last speaker. So as we have less time than expected, I would like to move directly to our first questions. It will be for the imagination, so to push our boundaries about the imagination, but also it will be more pragmatic. And I would like to start with the pragmatic way. So for all the speakers, please, could you mention some use cases of AI for the space technology and their added value?
No, thank you. So AI has come a long way, and one of the uses of AI now in space travel is with the taking off and landing of spacecraft, as an example. This is something that we probably didn't think about a couple of years ago, but AI is a fundamental part of what we do now. And there are other uses of AI in the sort of Cosmo scene, but I'll let my other colleagues chip in as well.
Thank you. So I've been working for European Space Agency for around 30 years, but now I'm talking independently. I don't represent, legally speaking, because we'll talk about law as well, the European Space Agencies. But for this very question, I asked some ESA colleagues, what's the use of AI for space exploration? So they gave me some very precise examples. So AI is key for the treatment of the huge amount of data which are collected during space missions. And it produces new algorithms to understand the cosmos and produce new projections and analysis. AI can also be very useful in the search of exoplanets, for instance, and extraterrestrial life through analysis of past and present observations. This is the case for the observations made on Moon and Mars. And even with very old images dating from 20 or 30 years ago, AI is now producing new images and analysis. It can also solve the communications challenge because the time delay by communicating with the moon of Mars can be corrected on the spot by AI. So it's very important for the space missions. It can also support the missions planning and optimization for the trajectory design, resource allocation, energy, oxygen, water. It assesses the whole needs of a mission in real time and can correct it. And last but not least, it supports human space exploration by the training of astronauts.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, I believe just to answer this question, there are kind of multiple different examples, I would say, but let's just take two examples here. From my standpoint, I think you guys know satellites, right? So how they operate exactly, like autonomous satellites operations basically in space, where there are no individual humans involved in it. Basically, it could be used for navigation or docking purposes between the ISS, the International Space Station, and some of these spacecrafts, or just think of it like that, at least from a basic standpoint, which you know already there are multiple different of these characteristics of multiple satellites, which there's no human involved. As one side of it. On the second side of it is, for example, when we talk about Earth observation and satellite imagery, for example, which is like super easy to understand as well, instead of traditionally we are dependent on for farmers and few different industries as a whole, which everything is done manually mostly. But in this situation, for example, there are satellites on one side of it where at observation you capture the imagery, and how do you refine the satellite imagery through AI, for example. So this is one of the examples as well. There are many other examples, but mostly, of course, the data centers and so on. Everything is interconnected in this specific situation as a whole, I would say. I think I pass it on. Yeah.
Thank you. It's easy to be at the end of the chain because you have basically said everything we can imagine of in terms of use cases. But what I would say is, what I could add is collision avoidance. It's one of the very basic use cases of AI. Imagine the space objects, the satellites, and the agencies use a lot of AI to actually anticipate the trajectories of the space objects to avoid collisions. But we use a lot of AI also for climate monitoring, because climate change is something you can prove from outer space, right? By observing the planet. And so AI is very important for everything that relates to proving climate change, anticipating climate change, and also for agriculture insights, because it's also a consequence of climate change where there is drought on the planet, and what we can actually do, anticipate, etc., in terms of agriculture insights. That's very important. I try to do my best.
Well, I would like to start with a disclaimer. The first thing I would like to say, I'm not an avatar. I'm a real human being, and I have flaws and hallucinations. You can ask my wife, so she will confirm that. Jokes aside, we are an investment fund, and we see lots of projects of startups in space tech. And basically, I haven't yet seen a space tech company which doesn't do AI. So AI is pervasive; it's everywhere. So I couldn't make the list of everything that you can do with AI. One of the top applications of AI, by the way, is probably to raise funds with VCs, because it will increase your valuation by 20 to 30%, as opposed to if you said you don't use AI. My colleagues actually mentioned a lot of use cases, which are perfectly right. Has anybody here looked at the movie 2001 Space Odyssey? Yeah? I belong to this generation, unfortunately, who looked at it. You remember HAL? You know? HAL was a kind of AI, right? And when the astronaut tried to unplug HAL, HAL was scared. He didn't want to be unplugged. There is one thing we should remember about space exploration. If we send humans to space, it's quite lonely out there. You know, it's kind of big. If you're on Mars, you're 2 years away from home. So you will need some companions when you have a kind of moral, you know, or psychological weakness who tells you you're great, you're beautiful, tells you it's not a problem if your microwave oven doesn't work. So I think one of the use cases of AI, LLMs, and chatbots may be also to support and to be human companions for astronauts who are going to feel isolated out there. Just one other applications among the many that my colleagues mentioned.
Thank you very much all for your insights. Actually, it's very short time, just in 40 minutes left, that we will cover all the topics around the space technologies and AI, because we would like to talk about the AI ethics, because it's not only on the Earth, but we have also the AI ethics and regulatory topic on the space also. So for the next question, I would like to ask you, Nathalie, and Thibaut, it's about this. So the data infrastructures are crucial to be able to progress on the advent of AI, but we are facing some challenges like AI ethics and AI regulations, and on the legal part about the ownership perimeter. What are your perspectives on that, and how can we ensure that in Europe and globally, proper regulations and collaborations on those second part? Any input on the AI, please?
I can start if you... Okay. So you may know that in Europe we have now a new regulation, the AI Act, and which was adopted this year, and that's a set of principles and obligations for AI developers and AI companies. They need to provide transparency. Sometimes they need also to conduct impact assessment studies, especially for AIs that are classified as high risk AI, knowing that some AIs are even banned, forbidden, you know, like social scoring AI, for instance, that's banned in Europe. But here we can focus more on AI that can pose high risk. And I can give an example. In space, if you have an autonomous vehicle in space, AI-driven autonomous vehicle in space, that's a high-risk AI, right? Because you need to trust the AI, you need to trust the object that is flying around in space in an autonomous way. That's high risk. And so you will have a set of obligations that you need to comply with, for instance, in terms of transparency of the algorithm which is used, but also in terms of supervision by the human beings. You cannot have a fully autonomous vehicle in space. That's according to European legislation. Doesn't mean that it's going to be the same in the United States or China, right? They can have a different approach. So the problem is that, is it applicable? Is our European legislation applicable to a spacecraft that would be driven by an AI and that would belong to SpaceX, for instance, right? And I don't have a right answer or a straight answer to this. I think it's possible once the AI would actually target Europe somehow. For instance, imagine that the AI would actually analyze, data relating to the European Union, right, from space, that you could say you apply European legislation. But that sounds a little bit far-fetched to say so, right? And so at the end, we will need to have an agreement on this. and to adapt existing treaties on space, because otherwise it's going to be talks and talks like this talk.
I totally share your points and your position, but it's important to have new regulations and to insist on the responsibility all over the place in the cosmos, the partners being private or public. But I doubt that some agreements could be binding if the partners at international level do not want to sign to the agreement there. It won't be binding. So we have to be more turned towards the soft law kind of agreement between partners.
It's very interesting because I would like to continue on that topic. So for the data purely, because today we are improving for the data centers and we have a lot of innovations around that. So please, Nudu, could you please give some insights for that?
No, thank you. So my colleagues here are talking about very wonderful things you could do with AI, which is important. But AI is all data, and that data needs to be housed and supported somewhere. And that's where the data centers come in play. So for us to achieve AI in the future going forward, we need data storage. And AI uses a lot of power. So as an example, AECOM, when we started doing data centers years and years ago, we're talking about 10 to 15 megawatts of power. We're talking about small IT hubs in offices. But to allow AI improve and give the capabilities for space travel, we're talking about 200 plus megawatts of power, and that's big power that we're talking about now. So what we're saying now is that there's an intensity in data rack power requirements, but obviously power is a big issue at the moment. So trying to find the right level of power to support all the beautiful things we want to do with AI and space travel is also important. So previously when we designed data centers, we'd design data centers for direct air cooling. But because the IT racks that you need for AI consume a lot of power, we're having to switch to what they call liquid cooling with data centers now and the higher power demand. In Ireland, as an example, 17% of the energy or electricity in Ireland is from data centers. So in the whole cosmos of thinking about AI and data transmission and use of AI, we also need to think about what are the power implications for data centers and AI. And we also have to start thinking of, is there another way to provide power for AI and how we implement AI? Is there a possibility of having data centers in space and using solar power, as an example, to power data centers and have less power requirements down in Earth? So the way data centers are designed now are very different to how we design data center, because AI is a part of us now. It's not something we think about as a futuristic item. It's here today, and it's probably going to be here to stay. So we need to think about data centers and how it relates to AI as well, because that's a key part of delivering AI.
I think it's a very interesting view, because indeed space, the space and orbit is a very different environment from Earth, and indeed AI is all about energy, basically, and energy conversion. So in space you have potentially a lot of solar power, because you don't have the atmosphere, so the yield of solar panels is very high, which is an asset. So you could imagine huge data centers in space. I fully agree with this. The issue, although, that you have in space is about power dissipation. Because cooling today is made with basically it's convection mechanism. In space, you don't have convection; you only have radiation, which is about 10% of the overall thermal transfer that you have on Earth. And actually, that's one of the big limitations of data centers in space. Yet, if we can solve these issues and find radiators which can evacuate the heat, potentially a source of innovation, indeed, we could have great data centers in space.
Yeah. And just to add to that, just to finish off, a lot of the data in terms of pictures and sensor information that's gotten from space at the moment has to be transferred down to Earth for analysis. If we think about thinking outside the box, could we have all this data processed in space as opposed to having to transmit it down to Earth for analysis? So again, it's thinking outside of the box, and could we potentially have data centers in space and take away that connection between Earth and space, and we do all the processing in space itself?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's good. So I believe, just to add to his point as well, I think one of the core important point here you need to also try to understand basically is the transmitting of data, which you mentioned, from space to ground as a whole. Instead of that, like, I don't know if you guys know edge computing. I think it's a new technology as well right now, where instead of sending just the raw data to ground, you kind of do the processing in space, and you kind of make insights already, and then you transmit, so it directly goes to the consumer or the organization directly, as compared to again just sending the raw data down, and then it comes to the data centers. Here again, somebody else processes it. By the time it reaches the real consumer, I think it's going to take some time, as compared to if you're using edge computing, for example, or a couple of other technologies as well, which you're pre-processing it in space itself before you're kind of sending it to ground. Yeah.
Yeah, as a lawyer, I think that the main point here is the data ownership. And, and that's really tricky, because we don't have a framework to determine a regime for data ownership when the data is generated by AI in space. We don't have that. And it's very difficult still on Earth, because AI uses a lot of data, and we are losing track of most of the data being used by AI. So you have giant corporations that actually have AI using data that you don't know who they belong to, right? But in space, there's another magnitude. And because space is supposed to be a non-territory. It's supposed to belong to mankind. It's not supposed to be owned by anyone. That's the principle set out by the Outer Space Treaty in the 60s. Space doesn't belong to anyone, right? And now you have a mass of data about space being generated by AI. They today belong to mostly private corporations or states, right? Yeah, talk to a state or a big corporation saying, you data generated by AI in space, it belongs to humanity. They will probably laugh at you, right? Because we don't have a framework for this. So we have a principle which is now not respected at all for something very practical. It's super important. Because if one nation or one corporation owns a very comprehensive set of data about space, it owns space at the end. It owns space.
You're right. Space belongs to everybody. And private sectors couldn't own some data coming from space missions. This is the reason why the European Space Agency has in open source of the space data, in particular the climate change one, the Earth observation data, open to everybody. Of course, then the work can be done with AI. But you're right, it's a matter of ethics. Space belongs to everyone.
Okay. Thank you very much for those insights. And I would like just to ask our auditors, before just pursuing the panel, do you have any question that you would like to ask? In French or English? Yeah? I will take a microphone. Okay, super. Merci beaucoup.
I will try in English. Okay. Yeah, you have been mentioning AI in general, more machine learning, as well as autonomous mechanism or technology. But I was just wondering, what do you think would be the impact of generative AI in this context?
Globally, or you have a specific vertical?
No,
I-
really globally.
I think it's going to be huge in every part of the value chain. So as I mentioned before at the start of the talk, cosmonauts will need companions for psychological reasons. That's one obvious example of Gen AI. But Gen AI is going to be everywhere. Gen AI can be used to optimize systems. Think about it. If you design a system, basically you use a language for CAD/CAM, a computer-aided design. When you think about it, a mechanical system is described by a language. Typically, it's a language called STEP. Okay, that's the open language for CAD/CAM. You could design LLMs which manipulate that language to design complex mechanical systems on the spot. Okay, and you already have people working on that. So today you use armies of engineers spending lots of time and expertise designing rockets, vehicles, heat shields, you name it. Maybe in the not so far future, all these things may be created and generated automatically by LLMs. Okay, applied to specific languages. This is going to be true as well for semiconductor design with VHDL, okay, which is yet another language. So Gen AI applies to everything in life which you can describe with a language. And when you think about it, you can describe almost everything in the world with a language. That's the reason why language are there. So the impact is going to be just...
It's more about the non-deterministic nature of generative AI. It's more when you are talking about having a companion for psychological reason. Yeah, okay, good, but this is not critical, I would say, in the system. Okay, when it is about, I would say, mechanical systems where you need to have something which is deterministic, there are some risks. So I think it's a really good. It's a challenge.
There are risks indeed, and of course, if you have LLMs, you have the issue of hallucinations, you have your issue of explainability, you have a lot of questions which arise. That's correct, but I still believe that over time, technology will improve, and we will increase the accuracy and reliability of those things. I mean, who today designs mechanical systems with a wooden board and a pencil? Nobody. Okay, everybody uses a CAD/CAM software. I guess in 15 to 20 years from now, everybody is going to use Gen AI to design mechanical systems.
Yeah. It was a good question. We will take back the microphone. If somebody has a question, yes, we have another one. Another one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, my question is about regulations that we have in Europe. You see, I mean, we talked about the regulations at the beginning. And my question is, don't you think that regulation is killing our companies in Europe? Like, could we be able to have companies like SpaceX in Europe, for example?
This, for Sahit, it could be nice also.
That's a very good question. I don't want to monopolize the mic, actually, and let my colleagues speak.
Yeah.
There is one problem we have in Europe is that America innovates and Europe regulates. And in as much as we need laws, in as much as we need rules, today the reality of what's happening in space, it's a land grab. And remember, in space, nobody here is just cream. Okay? So today it's a land grab for innovation, data areas. That's the reason why everybody wants to go to the moon. It's a land grab. And we have to be careful of not over-regulating, because otherwise, basically the Americans and the Asians are going to own space.
It's another spirit. I can answer for that also, because I have just read an article on Les Echos last week, and they were talking about Elon Musk for the USA with the new election, and they talk about we have different spirits. So they are innovating, and then they can pay a penalty for every issue that they can have, comparing to us in Europe that it's the opposite. So we regulate, before any topic, just to protect us. And please, I'll let you answer.
Yeah, it's a debate. You know, there is no one truth. It's everything is about balance, and you know, we had exactly the same debate with GDPR. You know, and privacy regulation in Europe, GDPR, and when it was enacted, many enterprises in Europe say you are crazy guys because we are over-regulating in Europe. It's going to kill the business, kill the you know, the economy in Europe, etc. The truth is much more nuanced. 8 years later, much more nuanced. Did it kill the European economy? No. Did it create burdens for some countries? Yes. But it also created a standard, an international standard that inspired and even forced many jurisdictions like the US to actually enhance their own level of protection of their own citizens, right? So it's creating you know, a common ground for regulation. So is it the same for AI? We'll see. But it's also too easy just to give up because you have that argument coming to your face that you regulate or you do business. You know, I prefer to be in an and world than in an or world. I prefer to try to do both than just one of them, right? But this is a challenge. This is a challenge, of course.
Yeah, like if you ask me the same question, I would basically think of it in a different way where like, I think there is no right or wrong answer here. I think it's a lot of things are interconnected, I would say, when you, and I don't want to compare SpaceX to Europe and so on. Like when you kind of look at in a bigger picture, right? You need to look at in a bigger market perspective itself. Imagine you build a company, okay, then what? The US market itself is super huge when it comes to who gives the contracts to SpaceX, because they get millions of dollars and contracts from the NASA and Department of Defense and big contracts across the entire United States government. Majority of that's how they are surviving, as compared to when you look at from a European standpoint, how big contracts do we have? Like, and these contracts are going to, it's kind of in a balance. They're going to, some of them are going to startups, some of them are going to scale up, some of them are going to some big institutions across Europe. But when you look at, even if you exactly copy and paste it here, who is going to give those contracts to that entity within Europe? The core part is you need to think from the origin itself, that the entire supply chain we have here, I would say within Europe, the next step is who is giving the contracts. These kind of big contracts should come from commercial institutions and also government institutions. I think at least if you are matured in that standpoint as well, I think when new institutions are coming up, like startups which are scaling quickly, the next step would be to kind of do business, right? If you have a big organization just surviving with VC money at last, now how are you going to make revenues? For making revenues, you need to have contracts. So I think from an origin standpoint, I think you need to think of that way. I believe there are a lot of different things should play at the same time, and also market should evolve. Yeah.
Thank you, Sahit. And if you can just keep your question for because it was just the pre-Q&A, so please keep it in mind. I would like just to come back to the panel for the last question. Actually, I think, I'm not sure, it could be for you also, but sometimes we don't know that the space technologies and all the innovation around the space technologies impact our daily lives. And to know about this, I would like to ask the panel, what could we have, let's say, a concrete example of use cases on the innovation side for the space technologies intersect with AI that they are impacting already today our daily lives?
So I'm sure these guys who deal with space on a daily basis probably have better examples than I do, but I know within space travel and the environment, pictures about the environmental condition, whether it has to do with fire risk or floods, are analyzed or taken. They take pictures in space to determine whether there's going to be a flood in somewhere in Europe or somewhere in the States. Those pictures are important for analyzing weather conditions down here on Earth. So AI has a practical implant on how we live our lives on a daily basis, because we can predict wildfires, we can predict rainfall, we can predict massive environmental issues that are potentially going to happen through pictures and images they're taken in space. So from that perspective, AI and space travel affects our daily life, and it's something we want to continue to encourage because we want to live in a safe environment, but AI helps us to help push that forward.
Thank you. Just, I would like to remind us that space conquest changed our lives. For the first time, some 60 years ago, humans went into cosmos, into space, and it was a huge event. So, what space brings into your daily life? Well, weather forecast, for instance, obtained from Earth observation satellite data. And space, as you mentioned, Thibault, space plays a considerable role in the diagnosis and analysis of climate change data and evolution. And United Nations uses, let's say, 60 or 70% of space data, of course, interpreted by AI to produce the reports on climate change. Of course, the geolocalization by satellite with Google Maps application and so on is key in our lives now. The materials, nobody realized the number of materials having been elaborated and tested in space. For instance, can be clothes. In dentistry, there are some materials. In surgery, to replace some bones or other elements of a body. And the medical equipment, such as the scanner, comes from space technology. And of course, satellite by broadcast, and also satellite and wireless banking. All the banking actions can be made thanks to space.
Yeah, I believe from my standpoint, I can just give you one example on from a weather forecasting standpoint. For example, you get some weather in your phone that today is raining and so on, right? That's one thing. But like if you go a little bit in depth into weather forecasting itself, like you are predicting natural disasters as well. It could be cyclones or rainfall and heavy floods and so on, which is like super disastrous, I would say. As per the UN Early Warning for All initiative, every country should have its own disaster management system, something like that, which should be able to predict in advance in couple of minutes and or hours maximum to kind of take a decision. Because I believe today, I think you can predict something in days time and so on, but the problem is, imagine if there is a cyclone which is going to come and which you just don't know about it, and what's going to happen. Think of it like you ask me as a government, okay, what's the data over here? I'm going to tell you that, okay, I need to process it, I need to do that, I need to do this, and I'll give you the data after like 20 hours. And the disaster is already came in like 3-4 hours, and everything is gone. And now I'm going to give you the analysis of it. What's the point of it? So I believe AI, for example, it kind of accelerates the whole thing. Normally, nowadays, governments itself, for example, they use ground sensors across the country. For example, they kind of have the data, and they all nowadays the unique part is like you can even take space data. For example, along with that, you can use weather balloons in between. If you fuse multi-source data from ground to space at multiple levels with AI and deep learning, I think the predictions, whatever you're trying to do here, I think that's going to be much more accurate, I would say. It could be for wildfires, or as you said, it could be for weather forecasting or any of these. I would say I think the core important thing is to decrease time when it comes to predicting anything related to risk. I would say I think that itself is a huge market, the disaster management, which is like impacting real people, real lives currently. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's going to be easy now to come up with something new. And something that can change our lives is if the AI detects an extraterrestrial life, that's going to change our lives, right? That's for sure. And only an AI can do it today, because there's just too much information out there that needs to be processed. Only an AI can one day say, I detected a signal somewhere, a sound somewhere, which shows an intelligent pattern or design in it, and that's gonna be an AI. It's and that's gonna change our lives.
Thibaut, please, I would like just, as you are an author of multiple novels, right? Yeah, so science fiction. So could you please, you talk about currently how it is impacting our lives. Could you just share few visions that you have, how it will impact our lives soon?
You mean AI?
Yeah,
Yeah.
AI and space.
Okay. So you're talking to the science fiction author or to the lawyer?
Author.
To the author.
Yeah,
okay.
to share your vision.
Okay. Yeah. I think the author believes that in my lifetime, an AI might become conscious, right? But not in the way we believe it is today. Because we believe that an AI can become conscious like in 5 years, because it's going to be a super ChatGPT, right? Talking like a human, simulating emotions like human, right? That's not conscious. That's not consciousness. This is my analysis. And an author also as a lawyer, it's not consciousness. Consciousness is something that today belongs to alive beings, right? It's biology. It's conscious biology. But one day an AI can maybe become conscious because it's going to vibrate at the quantum level. Like we're starting now with quantum computing, but it's super basic. Super basic. It makes calculations. But this is a way where AI can become conscious one day. But we don't know what the conscious AIs will do, right? But you can maybe anticipate it's going to be super wise. Because it's going to connect it to the quantum field, which is an infinite amount of energy, so information. So it will be not almighty, but super wise. This is what the author believes. Super wisdom.
Interesting. Thank you so much. Emmanuel?
Well, once again, I'm the last in the row, so it's hard to find something new. Two ways that space tech will contribute to our life on Earth. If anyone here has a home in an area which is not well covered by fiber optics, think Starlink, because Starlink is completely disrupting the telco industry today. And traditional telco operators are quite worried about this being disrupted. It's very simple. Another application, which is less obvious, we recently invested in a company which makes robots to mark roads and parking lots. You know, everybody knows these white lines and red lines that you see on roads and parking lots. Okay, this looks quite mundane and quite uninteresting. Well, guess what? The industry of road marking and parking lot marking, it's a $7 billion industry in the US alone per year. And these guys developed a robot using space data and space imaging, which is completely disrupting this industry. And enables making projects at a fraction of the traditional costs of marking roads or parking lots. So that's just yet one other example among many of an application of space tech which you would not imagine if you didn't know it precisely. So
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. We can continue because this is the end of the panel about space technology and AI. So please, if you have just one question, and we can just later on let the space for the next panel, and we can continue answering to your question just out of the stage. Thank you very much. So just one question, please.
On va juste prendre la question de monsieur et bien sûr, vous pourrez discuter avec les différents intervenants en dehors de l'espace de conférence juste après parce que je suis désolée, on doit enchaîner avec les conférences suivantes. Merci, monsieur.
Thank you very much. Victor Duarte, digital marketing consultant. It's more than a question, it's actually a little comment. I think at the beginning, the panelists were asked about the application of AI in Cosmos. And I was thinking, like, nobody has mentioned, I think one of the panelists mentioned this research of extraterrestrial life. I hear that a couple of times. And probably I'm taking the voice of a little minority over there. And I was thinking, well, artificial intelligence can help us as well with communication. And what I mean communication is interspecies communication. And probably I'm dreaming too far in the future. But actually, this technology can help us either here in Earth with other species, mammals or other animals, and also outer space. And it's just a little question. Do you have any, I don't know, ideas or project where I can keep researching about these matters, or I don't know, some thoughts about it? Thank you.
Quick, please.
Very quickly. Yeah, you know, as human beings, we have extraterrestrial life on this planet, and they are called whales, dolphins, etc. You know, they are not extraterrestrial, you know, but they are like aliens to us because we don't understand them. No, with AI, we start understanding them. You know, over the last month now, we have started to understand what whales are actually talking about when they are talking to each other. And only AI can do it. So I am totally in line with you. You know, it's more science fiction today. But with whales, it's the case now, or with primates. And with AI, we start communicating with other animals. And we are now realizing that much more intelligent than we believe, right? And so probably it's an AI that will be able to communicate with extraterrestrial life. Yes, I think so. Yeah.
So thank you very much. We have to close the panel. Thank you very much for your time. Please join us just left of the stage. We will be, let's say, it will be a pleasure for us to answer to your questions. And I wish you a very nice afternoon at the tech show. Thank you very much.